Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining the Preparing to Count Birds for Science webinar presented by Orange Audubon Society. I'm Kathy Rigling, the Education Coordinator, and I'm going to help you see how you can involve your students with community science and count birds. So what is community science? And now it's been renamed to participatory science. What is it? It's when people everywhere report their observations of natural events using some basic scientific protocols. And that map is not like cities. Those points of light are taken from one of the previous Christmas bird counts, and it shows where observations were submitted. Really exciting. So these are projects in which volunteers partner with scientists to answer real-world questions, like how are bird populations doing? So there are a lot of, and you'll hear it called citizen science, community science, participatory science. They're all referring to the same thing. There are a lot of projects out there, not just birds. There's ones about when trees bud and monarch butterflies and ants, and even ones on rain. So there's a lot of resources out there for you to find more projects if you're interested. The Cornell Lab's citizen science projects include identifying and observing birds, collecting data, entering it online, and then you have the ability to retrieve and view any of the online data that's been submitted. So why community or participatory science? Well, it is very exciting. It's authentic. It's real world. It's not just something reading out of a book and just, doing a worksheet. It's an opportunity to study wild animals. It can spark your students' curiosity. You're going to teach STEM content and meet science standards and also math standards. It's helping birds. It's very motivating, and it connects your students to the actual scientific community, and it is a lot of fun. And your observations matter. It doesn't matter if it's a kindergarten student all the way to, someone over 90 years old. These observations are valuable. And it helps the researchers put the pieces together of populations of the birds all around the world. So an opportunity is coming up for the Christmas bird count, which is, I'll explain what it is, but the Christmas bird count starts from December 14th to January 5th. And potentially your campus could be involved in a Christmas bird count. And the Christmas bird count started from a tradition where people during the holidays would go out hunting, choose sides, and go see how many different animals they could shoot. And that kind of went on for a little while. On Christmas Day 1900, ornithologist Frank Chapman proposed a new tradition, a Christmas bird census. And that's why it's called the CBC, Christmas Bird Census, and it's now been called the Christmas Bird Count. The first year, 1900, there were 25 counts with 27 birders from Toronto to Pacific Grove, California, and 90 species were counted. Last year, volunteers counted over 40 million birds in 2,100 areas, and this is worldwide. So if you are in North America, you can go to the National Audubon Society website, and this looks like a whole lot of stuff. All those little circles are places that there's Christmas bird counts, and the green and yellow circles are open to join. The red ones sometimes are very limited, or you have to in advance register, but you can click on those and contact the person, the compiler who's in charge. And if your school is within that zone, your school could be part of the Christmas bird count. So here are the ones in Central Florida. Now, the data from the Christmas bird count is used by Audubon Society and other organizations to help guide conservation action. And they combine that with information from Breeding Bird Atlas and other surveys to see how the birds are doing in different areas and how populations have changed. So it's very valuable information. So if you're not able to participate in the Christmas bird count in February, exactly the 14th to the 17th is the Great Backyard Bird Count. And this one, you can just participate anywhere that you'd like. You don't have to be in a particular zone. And I'll have a webinar on that in the beginning of February so you can see how to participate. It's very, very easy. Or you can go to their website. The information's already there. So why do community science, participatory science with birds? Well, you might think not many birds around, but once you start to really watch for them and get your students to watch for them, you're going to find birds on your campus. And you might be surprised what interesting ones you might have there. So here's some things to do to get ready to do a bird count. And you don't have to do it on a special day like the Christmas bird count or the Great Backyard Bird Count. You can do a bird count on any day. So the first thing you want to do is decide where on your campus you're going to count. So ahead of time, you want to scout, you want to look, maybe take your students out, look for places that have food for birds, whether it's berries or fruit, seeds or insects, place that might have some water and trees for shelter, and that's where you'll find your birds. Decide on the time to count birds. Birds are generally more active in the morning. You want to create a free account on eBird. It's very easy to do. And when you create that free account, there's lots of resources from the Cornell lab that you'll be able to access with your free account. Now, you might wonder, well, we can't count birds because I don't know what they are. There's a lot of resources I'm going to share with you that will help you. And if you don't have to count everything that you see, only the things you can identify. So there's some great resources. Merlin, which is a free app for your phone by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, is very easy to use and can definitely help you identify the birds that you see in your campus. Paper field guides are great, and if your media center doesn't have any, you can easily get them like off of Amazon for under $15. And here's some basic for bird identification. Your students are going to pay attention to the size of the birds, the shape, their color, how they're behaving, and what habitat they're in. So something to keep in mind, teach your students the various general sizes of birds, from the small sparrows to robins to crows to geese. And then they can kind of determine the birds that they see about what size they are. Talk to your students about bird families. And most students are aware, they know what a woodpecker is, an owl, a duck, so on and so forth. When they see a bird, they should pick out 3 main colors that they see. And pay attention to what the bird is doing, because some might be soaring, or they might be on a fence, they might be at a feeder or on the ground. And if you use the Merlin app, which I recommend before you do a bird count, get used to it, practice it on your own. Those questions are generated on the app to help you identify it. But even if you don't use the app, you can still use those general ideas to make identifications. So Merlin, if you're using Merlin, it will generate a list if you put in how big it was, the main colors, what it was doing, and it'll generate a list, such as this one that you see. And then if you find something that matches up, it doesn't always match up. You may not find the bird. Okay, that's okay. But if you do, then you can click on it and you can see additional information to make sure it matches up. You can even play the sound to see if the sound matches up. You can choose to submit your data to Merlin, which will get it to be counted scientifically. But the only problem with that, you can only count one individual. You can't count it if it's a group, and then you can't add other birds. You'd have to do a separate Merlin for each one. But if you have younger students, this would be a good way to go. If you don't use Merlin, use a field guide to try to identify the bird. There's a lot of really good ones out there. Another thing you might want to do if you're going to do a bird count is have each student in your class research a local bird to become an expert at, and they can maybe, these are actual student drawings, and they can draw a picture of it. They can write short descriptions of their field marks. You can see the chickadee over here. They pointed to different field marks. And so when you're out doing the bird count, if they see their bird, they'll know it, and they can speak up and say, hey, there's my chickadee. On the day of the count, of course, here's a palm warbler, and they see the palm warbler, they're going to recognize that's the bird that they had as their focus bird. All right, now using Merlin, and by the way, this will be recorded, so you can go back and watch this slower because I know I'm going kind of fast. On Merlin, you can open your app, and there's a section at the top says Explore Birds, and you can click on that and set the slider to list your local birds and by season, and it will generate a list of the most common birds of your area for the season you're in. As this one, when I originally recorded, this was spring. So these are spring birds of Central Florida, but you could generate one for whatever season you're in. Where do you look for birds? Well, treetops are a great place to start. So, when you get out on your campus, look around, look on tops of trees, poles, things like that. Look for movement in trees and bushes. Your students will get really good at this. Kids have great eyes and ears. And here you're looking for things that birds eat. So this is a Cape May warbler and it's eating figs. So get familiar with the plants you have around, and you'll find the ones that the birds like to eat. Look for birds flying in the sky. You might get something really cool like this short-tailed hawk. So some tips for your students if you have binoculars. Now, if you're local, you can arrange with our Orange Audubon to come out with binoculars. But if you have your own, you want to remind the students to keep the binoculars around their neck and to keep their fingers off the glass parts of the binoculars. And then before you bring the binoculars up to your eyes, you want to find the bird without binoculars and then bring the binoculars up. And that way you'll be positioned, your head will be positioned so you can see the bird better. And to always stand still when you're using binoculars. And to be patient, because it's like riding a bicycle. It's a skill that takes time to learn. And the more you practice, the better you get. So for the bird count, whether you're doing just a one on a particular day or you're doing Christmas bird count, decide how you're going to submit your data, whether you're going to use Merlin, which is just a one bird at a time thing, or use eBird, where you can do a more scientifically accurate count. Decide ahead of time. We do have a YouTube video on Orange Audubon YouTube channel that goes into a little more depth on using eBird. On the day of your count, you can count any bird that's wild, so no chickens or, domesticated birds. um, as long as you can identify it. If you can't identify it, don't worry about counting it. So I was out birding one day and I saw this bird far away, silhouetted, couldn't tell what it was, so didn't count it. It's okay. And remind your students there is some etiquette to watching birds. So if the bird changes its behavior, you're too close, you back away, you stay on trails, you avoid getting close to nests, and you don't play bird calls because it can disturb the birds, it can make them upset. And if you have a group and some students see a bird, remind the students not to run up and start, yelling and screaming, because of course the birds will fly away. If you do plan to do multiple counts throughout the day, you stop your list after each one and then you do a new list. And there is a free course on the Cornell Lab of Ornithology's All About Birds Bird Academy, and it's free. It's 1 hour and it walks you through how to use eBird. Thank you for contributing to science and counting birds. Here's my email if you need more information, if you want to arrange for a bird count at your school, just let me know. And if anyone has any questions, you can put them in the chat or you can unmute yourself. And thank you for joining me, and have a great night and count some birds. All right, anyone have questions? If not, thank you for joining tonight.